You got a full voice?
What I want to be. Okay, first, welcome you to the Post416. I'm Dave here, most of you might know. I'm the membership person here and also first vice. First of all, please put all your cell phones on vibrate. With nobody ringing phones. And with that, introduce you to Brian Steil, right?
Steil?
Steil.
Yep.
You don't get it, huh? And first of all, we agree with stand and we'll do a pledge of allegiance. Veterans can salute if they like. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now I'd like to turn this over to Brian, so you can.
Sounds good. Do I need this so I can hear? I'm looking at Casey or Matt in the back. Is my voice good enough? Yeah. If my voice is good enough, I'm just going to speak because that's a little bit easier. First off, thanks for coming. One of my commitments in office is to make sure that we're taking care of our veterans, that you and everyone that wore the United States military uniform receives the benefits that you earned while serving our country. My standard for places like the VA is you should never have to call your congressman because you need assistance. But until we get all of our services for our veterans to the level of perfect, call me, reach out to me. And many of you know when someone is having a challenge, when they're having a problem, and sometimes they don't know where to go. They're caught up in kind of the bureaucratic red tape. Maybe I stand up because I can see everybody a little bit easier. Is that all right? Sometimes veterans get caught up in the bureaucratic red tape and they don't know where to turn. And so I always ask people, give me a call. Because I promise you, I like nothing more than trying to cut through the bureaucratic red tape to get the right answers for our veterans. Casey on our team is full-time in charge of helping me, making sure that our veterans are receiving all the benefits that they earn. Sometimes they get some kind of standard calls where people are having a problem with the VA, maybe somebody has a problem getting their GI benefits. And on occasion, we get a unique call where we have to do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research. And Ann called me almost 2 years ago and reached out and walked through what happened to her mother. And as some of you know, Ann's mom passed away a little less than 2 years ago. And her father served our country in World War II and would ultimately pass as a result of radiation exposure while serving in the occupation of Japan in World War II. Her mom would live a great long life and we would be the beneficiaries of that, but would receive veteran survivor benefits. And when your mom passed, this is gonna be hard, I want to be thoughtful here. When your mom passed, the VA reached out to Ann and said, for the last survivor benefit payment, you owe that back. And Ann called my office and said, Brian, that doesn't sound right. They must be mistaken at the VA. And I said, it sounds like the VA is making a mistake. And so we called the VA and we ended up going up the chain and found out that years and years and years ago, Congress wrote the law wrong. The VA was actually, in this case, was doing their job right, but they were doing their job because Congress told them to do the wrong thing. And so the current law says, if you're a survivor, if you're receiving survivor benefits in the month that you passed, you owe that money back to the federal government, even though your family may have used that to pay your rent, cover a mortgage bill, right? Pay a car loan, grocery bills. Where are you supposed to get the money from? That's wrong. And so we dug into this and we realized we got to change the federal law to make it right for all of our veterans, and in particular, their spouses. And so we now have the Veteran Survivor Benefit Act that we're introducing in Congress to actually right that wrong. I've got great Democratic support because there's times where there's partisan politics in DC and there's times where there should be absolutely no partisanship. When we talk about helping our veterans, there is no room for partisanship. And so we've got great folks on both sides of the aisle ready to go on this bill, and it's my commitment to get this all the way across the line so that what happened to Ann and her family doesn't happen to any veterans ever again in our country. And so I want to thank you all for coming out as we introduce this legislation, as we get to work in DC to take a wrong and make it a right, to fix a piece of legislation that was poorly written years and years ago and get it written correctly. And the work that so many of you do day in and day out in serving our veterans community, let me first just say thank you. Our veterans community is better for the work that so many of you do by serving our veterans community. I want to say thanks to the American Legion Post here in Greendale for hosting us, and to the American Legion Post from around this area. I know we have South Milwaukee, we have Oak Creek, I know we have a couple others here as well, for your support in making sure that we're taking care of our veterans. And so I want to pass it over to Ann just to maybe, would you like to say a word or two?
Sure.
I'd love the opportunity for you to speak.
Sure.
And just really appreciate you reaching out, because what happened to you should not happen to anyone ever again in the United States.
Agreed.
Thanks.
So, my name is Ann Hessel, and first of all, thank you to all the vets. You guys are so appreciated. Thank you so much for all your sacrifice and what you've done. Thank you, Congressman Steil, for taking this up. It was a rather frustrating experience, so I'm glad that you're taking this up because it doesn't seem right. It doesn't help my family, but it's going to help people in the future. My father was Army. He was on a ship at the age of 18 years old and went over to fight in World War II. He was on his way to Japan with many other brave men, and their mission was combat. And it quickly changed because the atomic bomb, unbeknownst to anyone, was being dropped on Hiroshima. Their mission quickly changed from combat to cleanup after the bomb was dropped, being exposed to all that radiation. And as a result, in the late 60s, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and a few years later died, leaving my mother with 6 children to raise. My mother was an amazing woman, very strong, and she helped raise us to be successful adults and move forward in life. Unfortunately, she ran out of money. She was financially independent in her entire life until May of 2021, of which time before that I had anticipated this and applied for the survivor's benefits. And June 1st, that payment started. And then July came, and July 1st payment came. And on July 31st, 5 hours before August 1st, she died. As a result, I received a letter from the VA saying, pay that money back because you did not make it through the entire month. That doesn't seem like that works very well. That was not a great idea. So I reached out, and Brian took it, and I'm really grateful because other families will benefit if we can get this changed. So that's it.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, really just want to say thank you all for coming out. I think it's just really important that we take pause and reflect that we got to make sure that we're providing the services to our veterans. Sometimes we find things that are wrong inside our bureaucracy, we got to fix those. But sometimes we find where the legislation itself is wrong. And this should have never been the intent. And how this was written this way, we'll probably never find out. And this is years and years and years ago that they wrote this law in the way that they did. But we're ready to now take this, fix it, and make it right. Is what happened to Ann, what happened to her mom, what happened to her family. Never happens again. So I just want to say thanks for all coming out. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I know we have some friends from Spectrum, but also from many of you in the audience as well. Maybe start here.
My name is Dan Kupchik. I'm the American Legion rep over at Zablocki Hospital. And a guy talked to me. He says, I was wounded in Vietnam. I never got a Purple Heart because somebody has to write up the thing for the Purple Heart. And he said, somehow, I think that got lost in the mail. Is there any, and I don't even think he's in your district, but I could tell him to pass it on to whatever district he is at. Is there any way that if the paperwork was never written up, that you could get him his Purple Heart?
I can't tell you the answer on the spot if we can get it or not, but what I can tell you is we can work towards it.
Okay.
And so there's a process.
Even though the paperwork wasn't written up?
Yeah, no, but there's a process which we can go back and begin to see if we can get there. Why don't we, after we're done today, you, Casey, and I.
I've already talked to Casey.
You've already a step ahead of me. So I'll connect with Casey, get the information. We'll get to work on it and see what we can do.
I will have him notify whatever district he's in. And
Perfect.
I just want to say, if there is a method,
Yeah.
yes, okay, that's what I want to know, thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We all work together pretty well
Yeah.
as it relates to veterans. I mean, there's times, there's partisanship, we get it in DC. There's times where there's no space for that at all. When we're talking about making sure our veterans are taken care of, that's a firm commitment that we set partisanship aside. So we'll find out where the gentleman lives, and we'll get to work on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, sir.
It has to do more with not so much the veterans, but there's two banks in California that they're sort of gonna make everybody whole out
Yeah.
there. Are they going to go above the 250,000 that maybe you or me would be covered? Or you have somebody that had 2 million in there, are they gonna get the 2 million?
We're gonna go way in the weeds in this, and so I'll keep it somewhat high level. The Federal Reserve came in and took over the bank. They declared this as a systemic risk, which it looks like the Federal Reserve has the authority to do that. Then they came in and said, okay, we're gonna make sure that all these depositors, which are not any, at least not, I'm gonna assume it's none of us that have over $250,000 in their bank account, right? These are massive bank accounts. And in many, are you teasing somebody that they're legend? That's good. I love that. I saw you're giving somebody grief. If you got a $250,000, congratulations. In many cases, these were deposits for people to pay, companies to pay payroll. And so the Federal Reserve came in and said they're gonna secure them. We have a lot of questions to answer on this. So we have to ask why it happened, how it happened, who's responsible, and there's a lot of things at play. There's bad management, there's the fact that there's massive inflation, the Federal Reserve is raising rates, and so we're gonna have a full after-action report. But I'll tell you, super high level, the fact that we have massive inflation as a result of a whole bunch of stuff that went on previously.
Is that called executive order?
What,
Everything he does.
well, yeah, I don't wanna like dive all the way in on this, but we can get into a long conversation on that. I don't wanna keep this outside of partisan politics. But a lot of stuff went on, we got inflation, we all agree to that. How it got there, we could have that debate, but the Federal Reserve's raising interest rates, and so there's a lot of choppy waters, but as it relates to this, we have a lot of questions we have to ask, we're gonna have to have hearings on it. Because what we don't wanna do is allow anybody to find themselves in a position where they're out of their funds below $250,000, which is everybody else in this room. To make sure that we're protecting folks who are FDIC insured. But we're gonna have full investigations into this, making sure that we don't have huge problems across the board. Let me jump over, I apologize, you were first, and I'll come over, and I'll come back over to you.
Brian, Nate Bond.
Yeah,
nice
good to see you, Nate.
again. Two veterans issues.
Yeah.
One was the Camp Lejeune Justice Act that
Yes.
passed along with
Yep.
the PACT Act, as part of the PACT Act.
Yep,
And looking for you to please check into some reform of that bill, which would put caps on
The attorney fees?
of attorneys.
yeah, I've met, anything, I didn't
Yeah,
wanna
well,
cut you off, I
no, no,
didn't wanna cut you off.
The GI Bill Parity Act, so-called, where our Reserve and National Guard members would get a more robust GI Bill than what they're
Yep.
currently available to them. If you could look into that one as well, I'd really appreciate it.
100%. I've actually had conversations as it relates to the Camp Lejeune Act that you referenced, making sure we're actually helping people that have suffered, rather than helping attorneys make a bunch of money. And so I've been looking into that with my colleagues to figure out how we fix that technically and get it right, so we're protecting people, not helping the trial bar and a bunch of attorneys make money. And the second one is we're having broad conversation about how we compensate our service members. And so there's a broader strategy that has to be done to get this right, because there's, as you guys, as many of you who've served know, we want to make sure that we're compensating people appropriately kind of through the stream of the service they're providing. And so not only do we want to make sure we're protecting our National Guard troops and our reserve troops appropriately, we want to make sure our active duty members as well. And so we need a comprehensive look as to how we're compensating the men and women that wear the United States uniform. And so I'm all over this, and let's continue to stay in touch so we get that right, so we're still able to recruit the best and the brightest in the United States military.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. I didn't mean to cut you off, I jumped over you, sorry.
It's fine, I'm retired.
I'm jealous.
Amen.
Well, thank you for coming out, and
Yeah.
first of all, it's question that I have is more on the survivor benefits.
Please.
First of all, thank you again for your selflessness in pursuing this when it's for others, not for just for yourself. I thought a little bit about it, and I'm just curious if there's been how much thought has been put into unintended consequences. My experience in the past is you make a decision and then there's other problems, and then how, if there could possibly be resistance when you look at like Social Security. It seems very similar to how Social Security payments are made, that if you pass before the end of the month, that money's taken back. So does that mean that somebody's gonna say, well, if you're, the veterans are gonna get this, then we gotta do this for Social Security, and will there be resistance that way?
There may, but I think broadly, people understand the importance of protecting our veterans. And veteran survivor benefits is a pretty unique category inside all the benefits that we provide, and so I think people are going to be able to set some other stuff aside to get this done. The total cost is actually really low, and when we look at kind of what else is out there, this is helping the spouses of veterans who died as a result of serving the United States military, and so. My hope is that we can set some of the other challenges. We have plenty of challenges. We got to protect Social Security. We got to protect Medicare. Not lost on me, and I don't think lost on many of my colleagues. But I do think it's important in this case that this is a pretty special case to me, where somebody, in the case of Ann's father, effectively gave their life to protect our freedoms and liberties. I think that's a pretty special case and pretty unique. So to go above and beyond in that case, I think it's called for. So we're gonna work. There's always people that want to get in the way on these things.
Yeah.
I just think personally, I think this is the right policy to really honor our veterans and to honor in particular those veterans who gave their life for our country. So hopefully we're able to set some of the other wrangling that we have. There's plenty of fights in DC. If you have a TV, you know what I'm talking about. But to set that aside to get this right for our veterans.
I appreciate you taking this up.
Yeah. Jump all the way to the back. Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How
Thanks for
about you?
coming up from Kenosha.
Yep. Want to be here. This is important. So in regards to the Survivor Benefit Act, what can we do as individuals to help ensure that this gets passed?
Great question, Donnie. So this is about getting the word out. So if you think about kind of how Congress operates, it's 435 people in the House. We have 100 United States senators. And this is getting the word out. So as you have friends and colleagues in American Legion posts in other areas of the state or other areas of the country, you could have them reach out and ask their respective member of Congress, are they on the bill yet? So we're introducing this when Congress resumes. We'll be back in business on Monday. We're introducing it, or it's been introduced. I apologize. We introduced it before we left. And so we're adding folks onto this bill every single day. And so every member that signs on as a co-sponsor, we've got some great co-sponsors out of the gates. We got